highlighting history of suburban Sydney with the St Peter's Cooks River History Group.
Our aim is to preserve and promote local history.
We are based at St Peter's in Sydney's inner west.
The inner city harbourside suburb of Woolloomooloo is bordered by the Domain, King's Cross and Potts Point. The bay was initially called Garden Cove or Garden Island Cove, after a small wooded offshore island.
The island served as a kitchen garden for officers and crew of the First Fleet vessel HMS Sirius. Sandstone fortifications were built during the 1820s to protect Sydney from a much-feared Russian attack. In 1856, the island was set aside for use as a base by the Royal Navy. After Federation, control of the facilities was transferred to the Royal Australian Navy. In the 1940s, a naval graving dock was built and reclamation of land connected Garden Island to the mainland. Today, the dockyard facilities are used to service naval and civilian vessels.
In 1793, the first land grant in the area was made to John Palmer, Commissary General in charge of stores. Palmer built Woolloomooloo House and developed the area as farmland. Palmer's grant extended well into what is now East Sydney and Darlinghurst.
Woolloomooloo Bay has been used for bathing since the early 19th century. The swimming area was known as the Fig Tree. The first planned facility, a floating public baths called Robinson's Hot and Cold Baths, opened in 1838.
Free public baths, known as the Corporation or Fig Tree Baths, were built in 1858 by the Sydney City Council. In 1903, the baths were pulled down and a new complex opened in 1908. It was described as being a suitable venue for long-distance contests and was enclosed by a 1,700-seat grandstand. This Edwardian structure was named the Domain Baths. These baths were replaced in 1968 by a modern Olympic pool called the Andrew Boy Charlton Pool. Charlton had set his first world record there in 1924.
Tarman's, Sir Maurice O'Connell's 1838 villa, was purchased for a convent and hospital to be run by the Sisters of Charity in 1856. The following year, St Vincent's Hospital opened as an 8-bed, free, non-denominational hospital for the sick and poor. In 1870, the hospital moved to Darlinghurst.
The mangrove swamps were drained in the 1850s. A new semicircular wharf was constructed in 1866. Cowper Wharf was used by small coastal ships, particularly timber traders. Soldiers sailed from the wharf to the Boer War.
The land adjoining the wharf became dotted with sawmills, timber yards and small-time boat building. It was a centre of Sydney's fishing trade.
The fish were sold directly from the wharf until 1872, when the City Council built a fish market on the corner of Plunkett and Burke Streets. The building was extended to cover the entire block. It served the fish trade until 1911, when operations moved away from Woolloomooloo. The buildings were replaced by the Astor Apartments in the 1960s.
New streets were created behind Cowper Wharf Road. The area became crowded with small houses, brothels, billiard rooms and hotels.
In 1856, Sydney's gas supply was expanding. 2 gas holders were completed in Burke Street. In the 1970s, the site was redeveloped for residential use.
The foundation stone of St Peter's Anglican Church was laid in 1866 on the corner of Ann and Burke Street at Woolloomooloo, today Darlinghurst. The church was deconsecrated in 1993 and purchased by Sydney Church of England Girls' Grammar School.
In 1878, a decision was made to open a free public school at Woolloomooloo. It stated that children were roaming the streets barefooted, ragged and not very clean. They did not attend school because they had no boots, no tidy clothes and no school fees. Plunkett Street School, also known as Dowling Street and Burke Street School, was established. The first headmaster was Peter Dodds McCormick, the composer of Advanced Australia Fair. With the building of a motorway, the school was moved to its present site. where a recycled industrial building, bottomless terrace and new structures are today a primary school, after-school care and distance education centre.
The Industrial Blind Institution was established in 1878 in a two-storey sandstone building in Boomerang Street. To publicise its work and gain donor support, the Society produced an annual report outlining the finances, facilities and programmes offered.
In the 1880s, terraced houses were built.
In 1884, a private hospital for women opened in St Kilda, a Georgian-style house built for Charles Scott in 1844. This institution was the first of its kind in Australia. Before being demolished, it had been a boarding house, then subdivided into flats. The battle to save St Kilda was the first urban heritage uprising.
In 1975, another St Kilda, a seniors' housing building in Cathedral Street, acknowledged the battle to save St Kilda.
The foundation stone of St Columkille's was laid in 1885. It originally functioned as a church school. During the week, the school was staffed by Sisters of Charity. Mass was celebrated on Sundays by one of the cathedral priests.
In 1888, the Sydney Rowing Club had to quit their site at Circular Quay. A location was secured on the western side of Woolloomooloo Bay. A shed opened the following year. In 1922, it was destroyed by fire and another shed constructed. The club remained there until 1947, when the building was dismantled, transported to Abbotsford and erected on the site it still occupies today.
The Central Mission Home for Neglected Children, also known as Waverley House, and the Home for Waifs and Strays, opened in Woolloomooloo Street in 1893. It moved to Croydon in 1900 and was renamed Dalmar.
The area declined after the economic depression of the 1890s. Woolloomooloo was known for cheap rents and run-down housing.
The Plunkett Street Push was one of the gangs which terrorised residents in the 1890s and early 20th century.
The Gunnery, built circa 1900, is located on Cowper Wharf Road. The three-storey brick building was erected as a bulk store for the Sydney Morning Herald newspaper. During World War II, the Commonwealth Government acquired the building for defence purposes. The Royal Australian Navy used the building as a gunnery and instructional centre for trainees. It is now an arts and cultural centre.
Sydney's first day nursery for children of working mothers was established in a small terrace house at 126 Dowling Street in 1905. It moved to purpose-built premises where it still operates as the Sydney Day Nursery Children's Services.
Between 1911 and 1915, a large finger wharf was built. Originally designed for exporting wool, it became the location for World War troop deployment, post-war immigration arrivals and overseas shipping. By the 1980s, the wharf was disused and in bad repair. The government proposed demolition. A green ban was placed on the structure. A $300 million makeover created over 300 apartments, an hotel and a marina.
The Sydney Eye Hospital moved from Millers Point to Woolloomooloo in 1922. The 1885 building had previously been a coffee palace and apartments. In 1995, the hospital was relocated to Macquarie Street. Today, the building is the Pacific House Hostel.
In 1936, Harry Tiger Edwards opened a caravan cafe named Harry's, near the gates of the Naval Yard. The use of the name Café de Wheels was to comply with City Council regulations that a mobile food caravan had to move a minimum of 12 inches or 30 centimetres each day. The cafe became a popular part of the city's nightlife and gained fame as a tourist attraction.
During the 1960s and 1970s, the suburb again underwent a decline. Large areas were resumed for the construction of the eastern suburbs railway and freeways.
Plans for redevelopment were opposed by residents. Action groups united with the Builders Labourers Federation, which placed green bans on developments that residents considered unacceptable.
In 1972, the Whitlam federal Labour government came to power. One of its pre-election promises was to save the loo. In June 1975, an agreement signed by 3 tiers of government designated land for medium-density public housing. Old housing was restored and sympathetic new infill was constructed. Street closures, landscaping and new community amenities contributed to the residential precinct.
Murals on pillars supporting the elevated railway illustrate political and social issues of the 1970s, especially green bans and redevelopment threats to the area.
In 1983, the Sydney City Council opened a recreation centre in the former Firestone building. It was named the Juanita Nielsen Community Centre after the 1970s local resident who campaigned to prevent overdevelopment. She was murdered, but her body was never found.
The grassed area of park above Lincoln Crescent covers the roof of 2 large oil reservoirs built for storage by the Royal Australian Navy during World War II.
An art gallery's expansion project involved the decommissioned tanks being transformed into a modern art space.
The stairways of Woolloomooloo survive from the days when streets along the ridges were only accessible by flights of stairs. The separation of neighbourhoods by the escarpment was social as well as physical. Potts Point was originally known as Woolloomooloo Heights.
Horden stairs linking Brougham and Victoria Streets were built in 1882 and named after Edward Horden, a local resident and alderman.
McElhone Stairs, originally Chalice Stairs, recall John McElhone, a Sydney municipal councillor.
Butler Stairs has 103 steps. The name is carved into the stone entry piers.
Hill Stairs were constructed in 1869. George Hill was a Surrey Hills publican and butcher.
Woolloomooloo is part of Sydney's housing heritage, from the 1850s working-class cottages to the Victorian terraces of the 1880s, the public housing developments of the 1970s, and the recent gentrification of waterfront areas.
Old hotels have disappeared. New ones have been built on the same site, or buildings are now used for other purposes.
The Woolloomooloo Bay Hotel on the corner of Burke Street and Kuyper Wharf Road was the site of the Nell Gwen Hotel. It was renamed the Macquarie Hotel. The original building was demolished in 1920. A City of Sydney boundary stone was on the hotel corner.
The 1860s Dowling Street Wharf Hotel is now the site of the Frisco Hotel.
The Tilbury Hotel, formerly the Kuyper Wharf Hotel, was the location of an 1860s inn.
The Old Fitzroy was the Revolving Battery Hotel.
In the 1950s, Bell's Hotel was licensed to the noted boxer Jimmy Carruthers.
The Australian Hotel traded for 100 years on the corner of Riley and Cathedral Streets.
70 Forbes Street, built around 1865 as Bottomley's Hotel, has been converted to a house.
Bottomley's Terrace was built circa 1885 on the site of the Royal Yacht Hotel, now part of Plunkett Street School.
The first 2 stories of 95 Forbes Street were built circa 1865 as the President Lincoln Hotel.
36 Forbes Street, built in 1885, was originally the Eastern Market Hotel.
The Dewdrop Hotel, 98 Burke Street.
The Suburbs' impossible to spell name has been the subject of many a ditty. Children are encouraged to commit it to memory through rhyme such as: near Sydney town there's a place of renown, which is well known to you. It's called Woolloomooloo. It's easy to say, I know very well, but Woolloomooloo is not easy to spell. W-O-O-L-L-O-M-O-O-L-O. Now make that a feature, and I'll be the teacher. Let everyone here have a go. If you have enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel. It's free. Coming soon, Oatley, a picturesque suburb on the Georges River. And check out our website, stpeterscooksriverhistory.wordpress.com. Visit us the first Saturday of every month from 1:30 to 4:30 at 187 Princess Highway, St Peters.